Welcome to, two special guests. Our first interview from the London Congress, and it started off on quite an exciting note. This morning, when the session started, and the first plenary was interest reduction. I think some of us wondered how are we going to be awake for 3 hours. Yash Rupal, the panel chair, Yash from Linklaters, he not only kept us all awake, but introduced a typical British sense of humor. Could I call it the British Indian sense of humor, Yash?
You may do, yes.
He took some digs on politicians, at the cost of politicians, may I say. But jokes apart, yes, fascinating session. I think the key takeaways from the sessions seem to be it is complex. The BEPS Action Plan 4, that there are concerns on whether this could, BEPS Action Plan 4, the interest reduction could slow down economic activity. Does it hinder the global M&Es? You have the fixed ratio rule, the group ratio rule. How do they, function along with the APAs and so on and so forth? A lot of complexity. Yes. What were the key takeaways for you?
Well, I think the starting point is ready to say we're moving from a principle-based approach, the arm's length test, and we're going to move into a mechanical approach, which is calculated off EBITDA. It's a very formulaic approach. And we all know that when you have a formula, you can devise ways around the formula. So my main point on this is this going to really succeed? Is this going to work? And personally, I have a lot of doubts. We have created a lot of complexity. We have created a lot of uncertainty, a lot of divergence in how different countries implement this. And above all, it seems to me it will affect business decisions. Mm-hmm. So it's not really linked to what is happening in the economy. Mm. And also, at the end of the day, as I think I mentioned earlier, all jurisdictions are competing. They're competing for foreign investment. So whatever happens in one way or the other, I am not sure this is going to be the silver bullet that is going to solve the problem.
Before I come to Mr. Khincha, yes, some statistics, that was shared by the general reporters, Jim and Paul, that most countries in EU have adopted the earnings-based fixed ratio rule. The non-EU countries, barely 8 of 24 who submitted their branch reports have adopted. 30%, most of the countries have adopted in the EU a 30% benchmark. And some of them have supplemented it with a group ratio rule. For our readers and viewers who are now overwhelmed with this, could you just simplify it for them?
Okay, yes. So basically the European Union has decided to implement a minimum standard, which all European members must enact and implement into their legislation. And in that minimum standard, they have cut down some of the discretion that is available in the BEPS Action 4. However, it is only a minimum standard. So there will still be variance, but the interesting thing, if you look at the analysis, is countries like Luxembourg are tending to take every option that is available to ameliorate the effect of these rules. Whereas somebody like the UK is going further than ATAD and going further than BEPS 4 and introducing even more rigorous rules. So yes, by definition within the EU, the impact of BEPS Action 4 will be that you will see interest deduction limitations being more effective. But the point will be that they will not completely eradicate the problem. The problem goes to the root, which is what do we do about taxation of equity? What do we do about taxation of debt? And that's the thing that we really need to address. And I think in 10, 15 years' time, we'll be back to the same thing. The mechanical approach won't work, and everyone will say it was a bad idea. Where do we go now?
Yes, said at the end of the panel that another panel 10 years down the line will tear apart these rules. Padam sir, two points for you. One is, I think, one of the panelists did remark that probably arm's length test would be better than BEPS Action Plan 4. The arm's length test would have been a better test. The second point, I thought that came up in a big way, and there was an applause for one of the industry representatives, is that he said that this will affect economic activity and investments.
This is bound to affect economic activities. Couple of issues. There were some statistics played during this session which indicated that if you have this $3 million or £3 million as the basic threshold, 0.51% are going to be impacted. That means about 99.5% companies are not going to be impacted. Do we need such elaborate, complex rules in a situation where hardly 0.5% of the companies are going to be impacted. One. Two, and within this 0.5% being impacted, what's important is that what we find from the BEPS analysis is companies and countries have joined together to understand the problem. But in terms of the solutions, they're becoming divergent. The moment they become divergent in solutions, the conversion that was there supposed to be in both in understanding as well as in implementation, that's taking a hit now. The moment there is a divergence, there's going to be a sort of a possibility for me to take advantage of the tax differentials. Arbitrage is going to continue to me. If now making a mention that Luxembourg is going to give you an encouragement, Ireland is going to give an encouragement, these countries are going to find it easy for attracting investments by having a little more liberal rule. The moment money starts flowing in there, other countries are going to say, let me have the same rule again.
Yeah,
ultimately, therefore, it's the economy and economics that can drive business. I need to go to a place where it's more efficient for me because tax is the cost of my business. Therefore, as long as there are arbitrages available, to me, this is going to be a situation where you're not going to have much effectiveness in terms of implementing this.
How efficient is the Indian tax rule?
Indian tax rule also is a complexities, a maze of complexities. They were discussing about the GAR coming in, the transfer pricing coming in, the limitations of 30% of the group ratio coming in. To me, there's a fundamental problem here. You have too many options available. It indicates there is a design flaw. There's a problem in the way you've understood this whole concept itself. And you're trying to alleviate that problem by giving you too many options in terms of resolutions out. Many options, in my opinion, indicate a design flaw. And there's a problem fundamentally in dealing with this issue of interest deductibility.
Just like, the premise of BEPS itself, this action plan too, the fundamental premise is that corporations have avoided tax. Maybe they've shown debt where it should have been equity, and so many controversies, including in India, you had about recharacterizing the debt as equity and so on and so forth. So the fundamental premise again is about corporations seeking to avoid tax with, as Padam sir said, a tax arbitrage. If it's a high tax jurisdiction, I show it as a debt and I get the interest deductibility.
Well, when you say avoid tax, I'm not sure I'd use that label.
Plan tax.
I think the point is, as Padam Bhai says, the point is that if you have a series of rules and the rules are different, why shouldn't taxpayers take advantage of them? I wouldn't call that avoidance as such. And you're absolutely right. Here, the point is there's too much optionality. If the OECD wanted to deal with this, they should have been more prescriptive, so there was less divergence, and then we would have had the same rule operating, and then maybe, yes, it would have been a little bit more successful.
The one line of from the panel, the 2.5 hours panel was from Yash. He said, the purest way to deal with interest deduction is the arm's length test. But the tax administrators don't trust the courts.
Yes. So if you look at certainly my experience in the UK, there are very limited cases on transfer pricing where the arm's length test has been judged by a court. And I think the point with it is that because the revenue the tax authorities don't have the experience or the expertise to actually address these sorts of questions, they tend to shy away. I don't think the courts are people who would shy away from these questions. It ultimately comes down to doing an evaluation. And if you look at some of the other jurisdictions, like Australia, you look at Canada, they have grappled with very difficult transfer pricing issues. And so I think that my view would be to say there is no complete best answer here other than the arm's length principle. So I think we should stick to that. But I think the question we should be addressing is how do the tax authorities get better equipped to challenge situations? Because in the debt area, it's not that difficult. It's not like I've invented some new technology where there's no corresponding price for this. This is, could I borrow this money from somebody? There are plenty of lenders around. So why can't we get to a stage where the evidence is there and the evidence can be challenged?
So you concur? Final words? Short answer.
In my opinion, therefore, it's a situation where you need to understand business functions. To me, today is a battle between the tax administrator and the taxpayer. For a long time, they believed that the taxpayer had the upper hand, having devices or having strategies that were beating the tax administrator. There's a time when the tax administrator trying to have a one-up on the taxpayer concern to say, let me have rules that will strengthen my case. But then we are not looking at the judiciary, how they will interpret this issue. And we are therefore, in the ultimate analysis, forgetting the philosophy of tax as to what should be the exact principle by which this should be a design. We are forgetting that. Just becoming a battle between the tax administrator and the taxpayer concerned. And tax administrators are enjoying this.
The pendulum has swung in their favor.
Into their favor for the time being. Let them enjoy. Let us enjoy the power with us. We will therefore see that we are going to use this power against the taxpayers concerned.
Yeah.
Forgetting the tax philosophy behind it, forgetting how the judiciary is going to play about it. These are the four pillars. Today there's a balance only in these two is getting altered there.
Yeah.
We need to find out what's going to happen by the judiciary in terms of how they're going to look at these rules. If they are very, very difficult for a businessman to implement, in my opinion, judiciary will come to the rescue of the businessman and say, this is the way it should happen.
Judiciary is the last hope for the taxpayers, is what Padamchand says. Yes, thanks so much for setting the Thames on fire. I'll request my colleague to show the Thames here. Yes, you did set that on fire. To start off the IFA Congress proceedings, the first plenary, extremely engrossing session and some riveting discussions on inter-jurisdictions.
To me, actually, it was a wonderful session, especially the chairman's comment. Yes, were very brilliant. I told him this matter that, hope that the other panelists were rising up to his level and asking and answering those questions. They were very, very valid, very relevant.
Next time, Yash's panel is going to be like, whose bouncer should I say?
You're on my panel next time.
Thanks so much. Thank you.